Hi everyone, Nemo here, back to fact check another video. This time we're looking at a video where President Nelson says that the use of names other than the full name of the church is erroneous and offends Jesus. So we're going to look into those claims and see what we find. Let's get to it.
The Lord impressed upon my mind the importance of the name He decreed for His church.
So right there, when a prophet says something was impressed upon his mind by the Lord, that means to me he's speaking as a prophet. This is important because arguments go on all the time about whether so-and-so prophet was speaking as a prophet or a man. This is a pretty clear declaration that he's speaking as a prophet here.
Even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thus, the name of the church is not negotiable. When the Savior clearly states what the name of His church should be, and even precedes His declaration with, "Thus shall my church be called," He's serious. And if we allowed nicknames to be used, He is offended.
He, meaning Jesus Christ, is offended. I want to take a quick whistle-stop tour through an Elder Bednar talk. He gave it a general conference and it was entitled, "And Nothing Shall Offend Them." It starts with the subheading, "Through the strengthening power of the atonement of Jesus Christ, you and I can be blessed to avoid and triumph over offense." It then goes on to say things like, "In many instances, choosing to be offended is a symptom of a much deeper and more serious spiritual malady. Christ, by being offended at the use of nicknames, is showing a symptom of a spiritual malady," according to Elder Bednar. Elder Bednar goes on to say, "One of the greatest indicators of our own spiritual maturity is revealed in how we respond to the weakness and inexperience and potentially offensive actions of others. A thing, an event, or an expression may be offensive, but you and I can choose not to be offended." Is this to suggest Christ is spiritually immature? Elder Bednar also says, "If a person says or does something that we consider offensive, our first obligation is to refuse to take offense. Christ is obligated not to be offended by us not using the full name of His church." And finally, "I witness the reality and divinity of a living Saviour and of His power to help us avoid and overcome offense." Elder Bednar witnesses that the living Saviour will use His power to help us overcome and avoid offense. Yet that same living Saviour is apparently offended when we use nicknames for the church. I encourage you to read the talk. It's in the description and it's a gem.
To remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Again, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan. I reckon Satan had a field day in 2010 then, when the church's multi-million-dollar I'm a Mormon campaign launched, that was to be plastered all over major cities and the internet. Or maybe he was having a field day when the feature-length film Meet the Mormons came out in 2014, which grossed over $6 million. The church made $6 million from a film that propagates a name which is a major victory for Satan. For those familiar with the LDS temple ceremony, Satan declares, "You can buy anything in this world with money." It seems here that he bought, at the price of $6 million, the use of the name Mormon in a major marketing campaign and in a major motion picture. The church's price seemed to have been $6 million. You can pay the church $6 million and then they're willing to offend Jesus. Russel M. Nelson is suggesting here that the prophet before him incited a major victory for Satan and used tithe-payers' money to do it. Russel M. Nelson is suggesting here that the prophet before him incited a major victory for Satan and used tithe-payers' money to do it. And it's not just Thomas S. Monson he threw under the bus with this statement. Joseph Smith, the one who received the revelation which Russel M. Nelson bases his arguments on, had no problem with nicknames. He said, "Mormonism is the pure doctrine of Jesus Christ, of which I myself am not ashamed." I suppose we shouldn't be surprised that current prophets are willing and able to overturn the teachings of previous prophets. The following is from the church's website under the topic Prophets. "Our greatest safety lies in strictly following the word of the Lord given through His prophets, particularly the current president of the church. The problem is, The current president of the church will one day become a previous president, at which point, apparently, he's free to be overturned and overruled by whoever the current president is. This is problematic because, as it says in D&C 21:5, for his word ye shall receive as if from mine own mouth in all patience and faith. The prophet speaks for God, as if from his own mouth. And as we established at the beginning, Russel M. Nelson is speaking as a prophet here.
When we discard the Savior's name, we are subtly disregarding all that Jesus Christ did for us, even his atonement.
When we discard the Saviour's name, we are subtly disregarding all that Jesus did for us, even his atonement. The use of names other than the full name of the church disregards the atonement of Jesus Christ. Do we not see how this is holding people to ransom? Use the full name of the church, or you are disregarding the atonement of Jesus Christ.
If we as a people and as individuals are to have access to the power of the atonement of Jesus Christ, we must clearly acknowledge him as the source of that power. We can begin by calling his church by the name he decreed.
We can begin to acknowledge Christ as the source of the atoning power by calling his church by the name he decreed. So we lose access to the atonement if we don't acknowledge Christ as the source of that power. And again, Russel M. Nelson is tying that into the use of the full name of the church. What happened to Article of Faith 3? We believe that through the atonement of Christ, all mankind may be saved by obedience to the laws and ordinances of the gospel. Is the use of the full name of the church really one of the laws and ordinances of the gospel? To be fair, Russel M. Nelson has been banging on this drum since the 90s, so I suppose he's just had to wait his turn to become president so he could bring it into action. And not 6 months after he has sustained at April Conference 2018, not 10 months after the previous president had died, he gives an updated version of his 1990 talk, with the full weight of being president of the church now behind him.
My dear brothers and sisters, I promise that if we will do our best to restore the correct name of the Lord's church, he whose church this is will pour down his power and blessings upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints, the likes of which we have never seen.
Restore the correct name of the Lord's church. I want to end on this point. The use of the word restore clearly indicates his belief that we have deviated from the course. He even goes so far as to say in another part of this address that we will want to be courteous and patient in our efforts to correct these errors. He calls the actions of past prophets errors. This really hammers home for me the idea that, as I quoted earlier, our greatest safety lies in strictly following the word of the Lord given through his prophets, particularly the current president of the church. We just need to follow the words of the current prophet. Who cares what the previous one said? Thank you for joining me today. I hope we managed to make sense of some of this together. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and so you know when I'm on here next time, please subscribe. Take care everyone. Bye now.